Radio Wammo Breakfast. Time to talk with the co-leader of the Greens, Russel Norman, with us this morning. Good morning, Russell.
Morning, Wammo.
And last night you were at the Green Ribbon Awards.
Yeah. That's right. It's a Ministry for the Environment type thing, so it's pretty it's very mainstream kind of green awards. So there's a heap of people in the beehive. It was great.
And who took out the big award?
Villa Maria Winery actually took out the Supreme Award. That was pretty interesting.
What do they get up to?
Oh, it's their use of water. I think they've got about a third of their vines now organic, and also I think the way they're managing to try to reduce the impact on the waterways coming off the vineyard. So, and also their energy use and stuff like that. So it was good.
Any awards given out to dairy farmers last night?
Not that I'm aware of, but obviously there's some great dairy farms.
There was you mentioned in your post about it last night a guy called Andrew Fisher from EcoStock who gave a short speech. What do they do?
Yeah, they won the Supreme Award last year, and he basically and their company takes unused food, so lots of masses of food and liquid and ice cream and chocolate and all sorts of stuff that isn't, for one reason or another, can't be sold. And basically they turn it into feed for dairy cows to replace palm kernel. Palm kernel is, of course, the one of the products coming out of the palm industry, which has been taking over Southeast Asia and knocking down rainforests up there to turn it into palm. And so the palm kernel is one of the products. So replacing palm kernel is great. So it's a very interesting project.
And they've been doing quite well over the past 12 months since winning that award.
Yeah, I mean, they're pushing 1,000 tonnes a week now of food coming through their factory. So,
wow.
Which gets turned, food that otherwise was going to the landfill. Of course, once it goes to the landfill, it rots anaerobically, produces methane, a greenhouse gas. And fills up the landfill, obviously. So it's a win-win-win all around. It's a great solution.
Absolutely, very cool. So they're called EcoStock. Now, the Greens had the AGM on the weekend. What was the guts of your message to the Green followers?
Well, it's about the Greens have had a good election result. Now we need to bed that in and grow from here. We're still 2.5 years from the next election, so there's a long way to go.
Yeah. I know that poll. What do you make of that poll over the weekend? It's pretty.
Well, I
good.
think that's the general trend. Yeah, I mean, Greens on 13, Labor on I think 33 or something, and National kind of just ahead of the combined, or basically Labor plus Greens equals National at the moment. As National slowly comes off their high. I think we're likely to see that as an ongoing trend, particularly given their kind of attacks on education and basically everything else.
You've got to watch that. That could be taken the wrong way. Labor plus Greens equals National.
Yeah.
Got to watch how you say that one. But your message, from what I can gather, was we're all in this together. What do you mean by that?
So my speech was looking at kind of environment, economy, society, but just making the basic point that we're all on the same planet, and there is only one of them, so we need to look after it. We're all in this together on the same planet, but we're also in this together in terms of society, and so we need to look after each other. And some of those values have been quite critical in New Zealand history, looking after each other. And at other times in New Zealand history, like the 80s and 90s, the government decided to turn it into a war of all against all. It's just re-emphasising those values of looking after each other and looking after the planet. And then just making the basic point that the New Zealand economy is absolutely dependent on looking after the environment.
Something that the news cherry-picked out of your talk was the fact that you're not completely anti-mining.
Yeah, I mean that was a Nation interview. That some people, I guess, got the wrong end of the stick and thought Greens opposed mining, full stop, all time. But of course, we never have. What we've said is that deep sea oil drilling, we should have a moratorium on that after the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, where they showed that they can't plug a leak in deep sea.
Yeah.
And then, fracking with all the experience now in the United States and elsewhere has shown the problems there. So we've opposed some particular kinds of mining that are particularly risky. But that doesn't mean that you oppose all mining in all cases. Obviously the product of mining is, all around us.
But okay, so you're not necessarily opposing mining that is going on at the moment. There's various coal mines around the place, but do you oppose new mines?
Well, we certainly oppose new coal mines. I mean, we think coal is basically a death sentence for the human race. If we carry on expanding coal mining, then the greenhouse emissions released will change the climate in a really radical manner, or even more radical manner than the way we're already doing it. Our policy is no new coal mines, so not closing the existing ones but letting them run out while we make the transition. And that's the great project really, is we have to make the transition away from fossil fuels, not only because obviously cheap oil's getting harder to find, but also particularly with coal and lignite, there is enough coal and lignite left to cook the planet if we dig it all up and burn it all. So we need to transition away from them.
That High Court bid is on at the moment on the East Cape. Greenpeace have been taking the government to court on this one. This is the second day of hearings into the matter. It'll be interesting, of course, to see what the result of that will be.
They're trying to basically they're trying to stop the seismic testing and drilling and all the rest that's going on off the east coast there for deep sea oil. They're using some legal processes to try to do that. So whether Apanui were properly consulted or not with the local iwi. I think that it's a serious attempt to do it. I mean, the real issue obviously is that we're trying to basically prevent them doing this very, very dangerous kind of oil drilling, because as we get to the end of the cheap oil age, the price of oil has gone very high. It's predicted to go higher, so the oil companies are doing more and more risky stuff to try to get the last of it. But the risk for the east coast of New Zealand is that if you have something like the Deepwater Horizon disaster, and they can't plug a leak that's spewing oil for months and months on end, then you could cover the whole of the east coast in oil, where there's so much oil comes out.
Yeah, indeed. No sign of a back down from the government at the moment on class sizes. Would you have expected that the government should have campaigned on this particular policy in the election?
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to launch an all-out attack on public education, I think they should have told people that was one of their favourite little policies. And I think they would have lost a few votes. New Zealanders really value the public education system. And so, Nationals' attacks on it are deeply unpopular. And if they had a campaign on it, they would have lost a lot of votes. And given that they've only got a one-vote majority in the House, we could have had a different kind of government.
And do you think that funding should be siphoned out of private schools where they have lower class sizes back into public schools?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether you'd turn it around now, but I certainly wouldn't increase private school funding anymore. One of the first things National did when they got in was increase the funding to private schools, government taxpayer funding. And of course, the private schools advertise themselves as having low ratios, or rather low class sizes. It is obscene. I mean, the experience in Australia, is when I was growing up, because, I grew up in Australia, and when I went up, the kind of middle class and working class, we all went to public schools together. Yeah. And then over a number of years, the government over there moved more and more money out of the public system and gave it to private schools. So the next generation, like my brothers and sisters, all of their kids, because they were middle class, right? So all the kids from the middle class now go to private schools. Because the public system's been run right down. Right. And so basically it's the people on lower income who get stuck with the public system in Australia. And so you've developed this two-tier society. So you have people on low incomes all go to the public education system, anyone on middle or upper incomes goes to the private system, and never the twain shall meet. So you have this very divided society over there now, and I think if we go down that track, it would be a tragedy. So
was that a policy adopted under the Conservatives in Australia, or did both sides of the spectrum adopt that policy?
It was both sides. Obviously we had when we were growing up there, we had the Hawke Keating government, which was the equivalent of the Rogernomics over here, which was also just as Roger Douglas launched a war on the poor and the working class, and likewise Hawke and Keating did the same. So it was a similar kind of experience on both sides of the Tasman.
The reason why I say, because don't you think there would be an expectation from both Labour and Green supporters, or anyone on the left, there would be an expectation that whatever the national government is up to right now, the whole lot of it should be reversed when the new government gets in?
Certainly, my expectation is that we will. As, when we get in 2014, we're going to turn this around. I mean, I think, particularly for middle-class parents who have got choices, it's critical that we promise them that we will fix the public education system, because once it starts, the flood of middle-class kids coming out of the public system and going into private, then you lose the political will to invest in public education, because all of those parents, think, well, I don't want my taxes to go there. I'm already paying fees for the private system. I want my taxes going more into the private system. And so you lose the political will to make investment in the public education system. It gets hard to turn around. So it is quite critical that we make that assurance to parents that we're going to fix whatever national breaks.
Russel Norman, co-leader of the Greens, thanks very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
24 minutes past